This class, I want to explore the concept of personal narrative and why it's so important to all of us. We live in a world of mounting performance pressure. I think we all are experiencing that in our personal lives and our professional lives. And there's a natural human reaction to that kind of mounting pressure. And it's the emotion of fear. We all tend to feel fear when we experience pressure that had not been there before. And we're not sure how to deal with it, how to move forward. And we tend to want to just hold back because we're afraid. In that context, I think that the opportunity and challenge for us is how do we move from that emotion of fear that's increasingly in all of us, hope and excitement. And that's where I think the role of personal narrative can be very significant. So let me talk a little bit about this notion of narrative because it's quite different from the way most people think about it and talk about it. For most people, narratives are the same thing as stories. Stories and narratives, same thing. I make a distinction that I think is important and meaningful. And just to quickly lay it out, for me, a story is self-contained. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. Something happens to end the story. And the story is about me, the storyteller, or it's about some people, other people over there. It's not about you. You can use your imagination, figure out what you would have done, but it's not about you. In contrast, for me, a narrative is open-ended. There is no end to it yet. There's no resolution. There is some kind of significant threat or opportunity out in the future, and it's not clear whether it's going to be achieved or not. And the resolution of that narrative hinges on you. It's a call to action to say your choices, your actions are going to help resolve how this narrative turns out. So I think it's very different in that sense from a story in terms of being open-ended and a call to action. And I'll also make a distinction, I think it's an important one in terms of emotions, between threat-based narratives and opportunity-based narratives. Some narratives focus on a threat out in the future. Something's coming to get us, and that's a threat, and it feeds the fear. On the other side, there are opportunity-based narratives that focus on an opportunity that's really inspiring, that if we all came together, imagine what we could achieve. That feeds hope and excitement and helps us to overcome fear. So just to provide some context, I think narratives are important at many levels. There's personal narratives, there's institutional narratives, regional narratives or geographic narratives, and movement narratives. Given limited time, I'm not going to go into all of that. I'm going to focus on the narrative that I think is most important to us as individuals, and that's the personal narrative. And here again, I need to be a little bit careful because a lot of psychologists use the notion of personal narrative, but they talk about it in the sense of what's your story about your past? You know, how would you explain where you've been and where you're going, where you've come from? But it's all about the past. It's a story. For me, a personal narrative is actually forward looking. It's about the future. And the question is, what is driving you in the future? Is it a threat or is it an opportunity? And what kind of threat or what kind of opportunity is it that's really shaping most of your actions? So that's one part of your personal narrative is what's ahead, what's driving you forward. But then the other part, which is equally important, is what's your call to action to others? What are you asking others to do to support you or to help address this opportunity or threat out in the future? So if we think about personal narratives in those two dimensions, the looking ahead and the call to action to others, I think it's extremely important and influential in our lives in the sense of it shapes our emotions. On the one hand, if we're driven by a sense of threat, we're going to have a lot of fear. If we're driven by a sense of opportunity, we're going to be more excited and hopeful. It drives our actions. What actions are we going to take, depending on whether it's a threat or an opportunity? And then it shapes our relationships. How are we asking others to connect with us and for what purpose? To accomplish what? So I think in all those dimensions, personal narratives are extremely influential in terms of shaping all aspects of our lives. Given how important these personal narratives are in our lives, I'm struck by how few of us have really made the effort to articulate to ourselves, even, much less to others, what our personal narrative is. I mean, we manifest it through our actions, but how many of us have stepped back and really said, what is my narrative? What am I looking ahead to? Is it a threat or an opportunity? And what's my call to action to others? Very few people have really stepped back to do that. They're acting on it, but they're doing it subconsciously. And I think there's a real need for us to make the effort to articulate it, because you can get a lot of insight from just making that narrative explicit. To give an example of the value of articulating a personal narrative, I'll just tell you a bit about my own personal journey. In my childhood was very challenging. I lived in a very dysfunctional family. I was brought up with a strong sense of fear, and the key message that I got in my raising was that my needs didn't matter. It was all about serving the needs of others. That was the way I could demonstrate my value, was serving needs of others. And the result was that I ended up with a personal narrative, again, that I had not articulated to myself at the time, but that drove all my actions and emotions as I was growing up and in my early adulthood. And it basically, once I stepped back and reflected on what that narrative was, the narrative was, we're living in a very challenging world. There are a lot of challenges for all of us. Call to action is, come, tell me what your challenges are, and I'll help you address those challenges with my mind and my analysis. And I think, you know, again, it was shaping all my emotions, all my actions. But when I finally stepped back to reflect on it, I started to realize, wow, on the one side, I'm only focused on the challenges that everybody has. It's threats, it's the things that are holding us back. There's no sense of opportunity out there. It's all about challenges. And then the call to action was, how can I help you? Come to me and tell me what your needs are, and I will help you. But there was no sense of, again, my needs being important and helping me to address my needs. It was all about how do I help you? And then it was also very much focused on analysis and mind activities versus emotions. Because I had been raised as a child to believe that emotions were very dangerous. It was all about fear and anger, and who wants to feel those emotions? Let's put the emotions aside and let's just focus on the analysis and get through this with the mind and analytics. So that effort to really step back and reflect, articulate on what my personal narrative was a real breakthrough for me. It made me realize how limiting that personal narrative was in terms of achieving more of my potential and thriving and really addressing opportunities that were out there to be addressed. That was all completely absent because my personal narrative was much more limiting and narrow. I think it's important for all of us to make the effort to really step back and articulate our personal narrative. It's challenging. I mean, it's not easy, and there's a temptation to retreat. But on the other side, what better time to really do this? We're going through a period of enormous change, and it's an opportunity for us to step back and reflect. Are we, in fact, positioned as well as we could be to address the changes that are happening and to achieve more of our potential? But I think the first step on that journey is making that effort to really reflect on, what is my personal narrative? What's my view of the future? Is it opportunity or threat? And what's my call to action to others? What am I asking others to do? And by the way, for many of us, we're not asking others to do anything. We've been trained and believe that it's all about us. We'll just make it through in the best way we can, but it's up to us, and others don't matter. And I think that's in itself can be a revelation. If you don't have a call to action to others, okay, that's interesting. Why not? And what could you accomplish if you did have that call to action and brought other people, inspired other people to come together to address something that's really exciting out in the future? Step back and articulate what is that personal narrative. Make it explicit for yourself to begin with. Just what is that personal narrative that's driving my choices, my actions as I live my life going forward. But I hasten to add that that's just the first step. I mean, articulating the narrative then becomes an opportunity to reflect on it and to really ask the hard questions about, is this the best personal narrative for me to achieve what I really want to achieve in life? Again, asking the questions about threat versus opportunity. And then if you're already focused on an opportunity, is it a big enough opportunity to help you really achieve much more of your potential? And then reflecting on the call to action to others. And I will hasten to say that for many people, there is no call to action to others. That in itself can be a revelation if you say, oh, I'm not asking any help from anybody else. Well, guess what? If you were willing to ask for help from others, you could probably achieve much more of that potential and that opportunity together than you could just acting on your own. So reflecting on that to say, okay, is this the right call to action? And am I calling out to the right people? Am I inspiring them and motivating them in a way that will get them to act really aggressively to support this journey? I think those are real important questions to reflect on. And then to use those questions and the reflection to evolve the personal narrative. Your personal narrative is not fixed in stone. It can change, but you need to make the conscious decision to change it based on the reflection to say, what could that narrative be to make it much more impactful and to achieve much more of my potential? And then, as you evolve your personal narrative, there's taking action on it, not just making the words, but saying, okay, what can I do? What should I do? How should I be connecting with others? And what are the actions I can take now to pursue this much richer, more rewarding personal narrative? And I hasten to add, as I talk about this journey, starting with articulating and then reflecting and then evolving and then acting, this is not easy. It's very challenging. And we're going to have a temptation to retreat and not pursue this. It's scary. But on the other hand, it's very, very rewarding. We can achieve so much more of our potential if we make the effort and go on that journey. The approach to evolving our personal narrative is very challenging. And that's why I've designed a course to help us on that journey. The course tries to provide tools and approaches that we can use that can give us more confidence on the ability to make that journey. That this course is not just me talking to you, like this experience has been. It's been designed to be a much more interactive experience, where there's going to be a lot of opportunity for questions and answers, conversation, and not just questions and answers between me and you, but with the other participants in the course, so that we can share our questions, share our concerns, share our insights together, and learn together in terms of what's going to be required to evolve our personal narrative to get much more impact in our lives. So I hope you're motivated enough by this opportunity to evolve your personal narrative to sign up for this course. And I look forward to seeing you there.